So I'm here with Pierre, chairman of FiveT Hydrogen and CEO of Hy24. Thanks, Pierre, for joining us here at the World Hydrogen Congress at our media center. Looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you.
So to start, perhaps, I mentioned two companies, FiveT and Hy24. So perhaps you could explain your personal journey to hydrogen and also your current position and the two companies.
So I think to understand the journey, I should mention another company, which is Air Liquide, because I've been working a long journey, 25 years with Air Liquide, where I learned most of the industrial gas industry, operating networks, developing businesses, and that included the hydrogen business. First, the legacy business, which is the grey hydrogen, what you call the high grey hydrogen. I managed at the time the Benelux operation of Air Liquide, which is the largest pipeline of hydrogen business for the steel and chemical and refining industry. And over the last 10 years, I was in charge of the portfolio of technology companies of Air Liquide and new markets, which included hydrogen energy. And then, with this hydrogen energy thing, I become addicted, I would say, to the hydrogen topic. I became the chair of Hydrogen Europe for 6 years. I steered it up to into the moment I handed over to Jorgo, that everybody knows, and Nicolas Braillet at the time. Then I created a hydrogen council, which we co-led between Toyota, Hyundai, and Air Liquide for 4 years. I was the secretary for it, and progressively, I developed thought about this idea that if we wanted to move to scale, it was needed to gather the industrial players to have them on trust, a GP, an asset manager with some money, enabling to fund large projects. And this is where the story of the fund started. And I came then to the conclusion that the only way to make it happen was probably that I tried to do it myself with a team of other industry experts, because if I was waiting for classical asset managers to do it, they would not take the risk alone. So that's the story. I said to the kid, I'm going to leave, I'm going to try to do this, and it worked. So we created FiveT, we gathered some LPs from the US, we then gathered the other ones from Europe, which were already trying to organize themselves, Air Liquide, Total, Vinci. Then we made an alliance jointly with Ardian to make this very structured asset manager, because Ardian is the largest asset manager in Europe, and that's how Hy24 came to fruition. And so, as you may know, now we are a team of 28 people. We closed for real this infra fund. It's a 2 billion fund, 50% with investors from industry, 50% investors from the financial world. And this fund is going to invest in a way that it can trigger 20 billion of value of assets that we're going to invest in, from the upstream to the downstream. So from large projects to distribute, to produce hydrogen, to its use into all the key segments, mobility, steel making, refining, chemicals, etc. So that's the story.
Based on the experience you got during your impressive career so far, and the funds you're managing at the moment, so where do you see the largest investment opportunities at the moment? On the one side regionally, but also along the hydrogen value chain. So where's the largest need to invest now?
Well, I think the situation has just changed in the last 2 months. It changed because in the US, the IRA has basically now given a real structured support scheme to enable large green hydrogen projects to come to fruition. And in Europe, the IPCEI announcements are now making many projects move forward. The first obvious consumers of green hydrogen are the existing grey hydrogen consumers, so basically ammonia and refining, that can progressively shift and even blend green and grey and shift their share of clean hydrogen in their total consumption progressively. So it gives a non-core customer base, which is fundamental to develop the first basin, hundreds of megawatt project. I think this is the first step. The second one that's going to come relatively fast is to develop local, heavy, loaded use of hydrogen for heavy mobility or intensive mobility. Taxi fleets, light commercial vehicle fleets, heavy and medium duty corridors. That's coming in Europe. That's already there in Korea. It's coming in Japan and in California. And it's going to China as well. And the third element is probably those attempts of key industry processes industry that need to shift from high carbon to low carbon processes like the coal reducing agent of the blast furnaces in steel making that could be replaced by hydrogen from DRI. That could happen. That could happen relatively fast. The question is where. And the question then leads to the last segment that's going to be started now, but it's going to start, in terms of assets of the ground, maybe later in the decade, are those very large power to something projects which are located in very cheap renewable energy spaces like Australia, Oman, Chile, and other places, and are going to then transform renewable into a hydrogen-rich vector. Could it be HPI, could be ammonia, could be metal. Those projects are going to be on stream late, but they're going to start now. And it means that they will have a lot of investment opportunities in those projects as well today to just enable them to grow.
Okay, so now we know about the value chain and also the regional focus, but there's a lot of announcement. Just the newest Hydrogen Insights report from the Hydrogen Council was published. Again, a really large amount of investments that will be made, but still a lot of projects struggling to get to the final investment decision. So where do you still see the largest challenges in reaching bankability for these, especially large-scale projects?
I think it's all related to this capacity to have a customer and an off-taker. And that is itself dependent from the regulation in those countries which push those companies to move into large off-take. So if you take the key, for very large projects which are looking at power to X, the key off-takers today are ammonia off-takers, which are either fertilizer industries or utilities who wants to substitute their coal power plant partly with ammonia. So it's coming mostly in Korea, Japan, and could be in Germany. And it's driven by regulation. So it's not subsidy, it's regulation. So I think the more regulation will be stringent in the decade, the more we'll see off-takers ready to pay the cost for it. So that's one way. And so for project developers, they really need to connect to those very large utilities who need to show that they're moving to low carbon. In order to be able to show to the bankings or funds or other players that there is somebody at the end, at the output of the production that's going to take it. I think when we look at the other part, which are more local projects, you need to be in a basin and you need to have a base offtake coming from existing grey hydrogen producers who want to shift. And then with that, you can build bigger plants, having some economics of scale, and then develop byproducts supplied to other players. Could be mobility, could be shifting some heavy heat industry processes into hydrogen. But you need a base load offtake, and that again is going to be dependent on the subsidy schemes and the regulations in the key countries. Because even though some people say it's just a question of B2B, if you don't have a key incentive to shift from grey to green, why should you? So you need to find a way to shift to grey to green. And even though long term, with the current pricing situation, green might become cheaper than grey, today it's not the case. It's going to take still a couple of years.
So you think definitely that there is not yet enough pull effect from the end customers for the green products. So we still need subsidies and subsidizing schemes like H2 Global or the Hydrogen Bank.
Absolutely. I think you need part of it. I don't think it's going to be long, that subsidy plan. We need it for maybe the decade. And we need in parallel the regulation to move the needle to low carbon processes requirements, the RED free in Europe, but we will have the same types in other places, so that industries are basically shifting, so that in the future the new normal is the green hydrogen. And then green hydrogen might come to a premium of 1 to 2 euros per kilo, but it's going to be compensated by the CO2 price, which is going to raise as well.
Yeah. So moving towards fixed quotas like with RFNBOs in transport sector, also in other industry sectors.
That's probably the way to really move forward, because people make the link with renewable industry. But renewable industry, first you had the grid, so you could always inject in the grid. And you started with feed-in tariff, and then it moved to tender processes. But because you can sell the electron to the grid, you always have an offtake. And you've got a management which is the grid. Here, hydrogen, you need to build the whole supply chain, which is taking more time. So that's why you need regulation to bring the people to accept to pay the premium of green. But we are very optimistic of that because we raised the fund, which is an Article 9 fund, which means it's only going to support those because we believe the value creation tomorrow will be in the green assets. The grey assets will become stranded assets over the time. So there's no future in investing grey assets today. The future is in investing green assets today large enough so that tomorrow they're competitive in the global infra play.
So then, couldn't say it better. But to a last question, I mean, we talked about bankability, reaching FID. From your experience around projects and with the fund, so what could be an advice that you can give also for project developers that they can do in an early stage of the project to easier and faster and more securely reach a final investment decision and bankability of their projects?
So I would give two different types of advice. First, to the ones that are looking very large projects, be careful not to be out of the market because you're waiting too long to have your assets on the ground, because the longer the DevEx is, the more uncertain you are to have an asset on the ground one day, and that's frightening the investors. It's good to have a very high level ambition in the type of assets you want, but you need interim steps so that there is a way to monetize the value of what's been done by FEED, by first assets on the ground, first COD, etc. And then you move to scale. And then reverse advice to the ones that are trying to develop very rapidly small assets. Small assets have no value. They have no value. So you need to find sizable assets. I think if you take hydrogen electrolysis, it should be no less than around 100 megawatts. If you look at downstream mobility project, it needs to be large captive fleets with several, in a regional base with several very large stations, so that you've got a volume effect and a scale effect. And if you take downstream use in the steel or in the refining industry, you need a sizable volume of tech so that the piping, the supply chain can be justified. So not too small, and if it's too big, not too late.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for sharing these insights with us.
Thank you.
Very valuable.
Thank you very much.
Wish you all the best with Hy24 and a lot of nice and fruitful projects.
Hopefully. Thank you. We'll make our best. Thank you very much. Thank you.